We need to trust each other. We can't fight a war amongst ourselves. We have so many enemies now.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of History Behind the Character from my book, Black Royalty. Let's get started. Today, we'll be talking about Jacqueline and Benjamin, Samara's children before she met Torin. And of course, we gotta start with the actors who portray them. So let's start off with Jacqueline, who is played by Antoinette Robertson, and Demi Omobi, who is playing Benjamin. I'm going to talk about Jacqueline and Benjamin, who are Samara's children before she met Torin. Jacqueline, who was her blood daughter, and Benjamin, who's her nephew, who she took in as her own. In the book, I talk about Jacqueline and Samara, how Jacqueline was her daughter from a previous marriage. I don't go about in detail about who he was, who her father is, who Samara's husband was. But if I had to make a prediction about who the man was, I would say he was someone great and someone that Samara truly loved. And because of whatever happened to him, let's just say probably he probably passed away. That's probably the most likely thing that happened to him. Let's just say after his death, Samara went the extra mile to take care of Jacqueline. Whereas Benjamin, whose parents were murdered, it was Samara's sister who Benjamin belonged to, and now she's raising him as her own. And in the book, I don't talk about much detail about what happened to Benjamin's parents. I just say that they were murdered. I don't say why or what happened. I just say that they were murdered. And if my predictions, since I didn't write it, my predictions just say that it was a robbery gone wrong. They were probably mistaken for somebody else. And thus, now that they're dead, it's Samara who takes care of Benjamin. And fast forward to when Samara meets Torin, she gets Jacqueline and Benjamin, takes them with her to Cortland, where there's already Ambrose and Harrison there. And that's when the two families really meet, when they conjoin. And the relationship between Ambrose and Harrison and Jacqueline and Benjamin was very strange at first. Life for Jacqueline in Cortland was kind of strange for her. Since she was the only girl with 3 other brothers, she spent the majority of her time with her mother. And Benjamin just, he had a great relationship with Ambrose and Harrison. And that was never an issue between the two. It was just more so Ambrose's relationship with Samara that kind of put a strain on things. From present day, from when the book starts, everybody's already an adult, relationships already formed, and the brothers already have a close relationship. Jacqueline and Claudia, I'm gonna get into that a little bit in a second. They have a great relationship as well. And the Herveaux, but and a substitute Nevere, which I will explain here in a second as well, it's very together. When Claudia, the second daughter to the Herveaux dynasty, when she was born, Jacqueline immediately was attached to her. Finally, there was another girl in the family, and because after being surrounded by so many boys, by so many brothers, Jacqueline finally had somebody to bond to, and they never saw each other as half siblings. They never saw each other like that. They were each other's blood sisters, and that's how the relationship was from day one. And as far as the relationship with Nevere goes, both Benjamin and Jacqueline loved him. They looked past sexuality. They looked past who he was attracted to. Whereas Ambrose and Romero, who I'll get into, who has yet to be introduced, whereas they distanced themselves from Nevere, Benjamin and Jacqueline took it upon themselves to show him that love that he never had from his other siblings. I think because one of the main reasons is because they were also kind of the outsiders. They were from Samara's side of the family, and when they had came in to join the picture. So being the outcast, being kind of the black sheep of the family, they found a connection with Nevere that his brothers and sisters didn't have with him. Let's talk about character growth. Jacqueline's story truly begins when she marries a kid from her childhood named Thaddeus. She is promised to him, they get married, she takes off and lives in his kingdom as queen. And I'm gonna talk about Thaddeus and his family later on down the road once I finish the Herveaux family tree. But that's really where her story takes place. You know, that's when her character develops. That's when she becomes a woman. That's when everything is taking its course. And what I like about Jacqueline's transformation is she goes from a child to a young girl to a woman to a queen. Even when tragedy struck, Jacqueline still remained true to who she was, and she didn't allow the outside world to affect who she was as a person. Now, let's talk about Benjamin. Benjamin, you know, I'm all about character growth. And Benjamin really hits rock bottom in the book, and I'm not going to say why, I will eventually, but he really hits rock bottom. He goes through it. He's having trouble finding his identity, finding his path, finding his calling. Whereas his brothers and sisters are getting married, you know, starting lives of their own, Benjamin really feels lost. You know, he's not royal blood. Even though he comes from Samara, who was a princess and who married Torin, he doesn't have the same status and standard than his brothers and sisters do. And I feel like that really bothers him, and I feel like that starts to take a toll on his view on life. Because in his eyes, he's like, what do I have to offer? What is my purpose? What's my calling? Where does life take me? So he feels lost, and he really feels like no one else sees this but himself, and he doesn't want to burden anybody. So, you know, of course, that drives him away from the ones that love him, and he just has trouble grasping reality. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the history behind Jacqueline and Benjamin. You know, they came from being your regular prince and princess to becoming part of a dynasty, the Hervault dynasty. And I'm excited for you to see their journey. And I'll see y'all next time on the next video when I talk about the last 4 members of the Hervault dynasty, Romero, Claudia, Nevere, and Louis. And I'm excited for that video. I'm really, it's probably going to be 2 to 3 parts. There's just so much that has to go on that I have to explain. But I look forward to it, and I hope you do too.